Finally, today has arrived where I can finally gather my thoughts and reveal my theory. Let's fashion ourselves as detectives, and like the great detective Sherlock Holmes, let's solve this mystery once and for all. Except not, because I'm still a little bit confused. Okay, let me tell you. I think I've mostly found everything about the first few games, but episode 4 is just completely insane. Okay, let's start. Okay, this is my attempt at explaining what happens in the question arcs. Whodunnit and Whydunit. Why Shannon is the main killer for the first 2 episodes. She's the main murderer for all the crimes until the end of episode 2. My reasoning for this is quite complex, so let me explain everything. I think that Shannon has 2 personalities. There's one in love with Battler, that is Beatrice, and the one in love with George, Shannon, in quotation marks, in love. I think that Shannon might be lying about her age, and I think that she might be older than she seems. I think that on at least 18 years of age. I think that she's 18 or perhaps even 19 at the family conference. And the reason for that is because I think that she's related to that second Beatrice who died. I think that she's the daughter of Kinzo with his own daughter Beatrice. So she's a product of incest. And that Beatrice who had died is also a product of another Beatrice as well, so that there's a madness to this. So I think that there are 3 generations of Beatrices in this. I think that Shannon herself was raised in the gospel house and then quickly became a servant, and she's still related to Kinzo by blood, but I don't think that he knew about it. Since Rosa killed her mother, Beatrice, it could lead to a partial motive for Shannon to have done this. Kinzo and the whole family treating her badly might have been another cause that led her to kill people. I think we see that with Eva and Natsuhi constantly ragging on her since the beginning of the visual novel, so I think that that's partly the motive. But the main motive was, I think, a promise that Battler made with her, and he broke that promise 6 years before. I think that she loved Battler before George came into the picture. And I think that this shows in episode 3, in the beach scene, where she rags on about an embarrassing memory with Battler. That was a very intimate thing, so I think that those 2 were childhood sweethearts, I think. I don't think that Shannon actually cares about George. I think that their relationship is just a way for Shannon to distract herself. I think that it's just to distract herself from the hurt that broken promise led to. And when Battler comes back 6 years later, those feelings return, and then she commits the crime. She commits the murders, I think. So broken promises with Battler and breaking free from her treatment as a servant when she actually is related to Kingzo. I think those two are the main motives for the crimes. And I think that she acts because Battler returns, not because of something or another. Battler returns to the family, and Kingzo is already dead by that point, so she can commit the crimes. So her father is dead, and the lover who broke his promises returned. Those are the motives that Shannon used. But Shannon is the only culprit for the first 2 episodes. So this is a presentation I made, so it becomes more pretty during the video. So don't worry, I'm not going to edit or do anything. This is wholly unedited with just that angle playing the background as I make this. I had a docs open here. It's quite fantastic here what I made. So Whodunnit in the 3rd episode. Shannon and Ava are 2 murderers in episode 3. So what are my reasons for that? Since Ava solves the epitaph, both the gold and the secret passage are made to be real because we didn't know about it since before the episode 3. If the gold was real, it could have been that the gold wasn't real because of episode 2, Twilight. There were 3 bars of gold, and then you had Cross with the 1 bar of gold in episode 1, but still you couldn't still be sure that the mountain of gold or whatever was real. But episode 3, we find out that there's a secret passage to the gold in that passage, and there's a hidden mansion as well. So there's a hidden mansion and there's a passage. So the reason for the 2 culprits being in this episode 3 is that Ava, unbeknownst to Shannon, solved the epitaph and got close to the gold. Unbeknownst to Shannon, who was faking her death, Ava and Rosa had a dispute over the golds, and I think that paranoia about losing the gold led to Ava killing both Rosa and Maria. Ava murdered, and she kept murdering over the gold she had found. That's the reason she was one of the culprits. But since Shannon was still alive, she was also planning her own set of murders. And since the stakes of the 7 sisters were not planted on Maria or Rosa on the forehead, the second Twilight wasn't a Twilight at all. It was another culprit entirely. So it messed with Shannon's plans, I think. So who done it for the episode 4 that I'm so confused by? I think it was Shannon and Kyrie. I think that Shannon might have coerced a lot of the servants into locking up Cross and drugging the siblings. And Kyrie was forced to act, but then partway Kyrie betrayed Shannon, and both started hunting each other. It's so confusing. I don't know if my Episode 4 is so confusing. I have no idea. I think maybe Kiri wanted revenge against Battler, but I don't know. I have no idea. I have no clue about episode 4, really. But the other 3 episodes I have a clue about, I think. Yeah, episode 4 is too confusing. So how did everything happen? Let's go to episode 1. The first Twilight. Episode 1, first Twilight. The victims of the first Twilight were all drugged, I think, on that night. Shannon was on duty that night, and she brought maybe tea with poison or sleeping drugs. They were killed quickly and painlessly because there was just a spot of blood there. So it's quite... It wasn't like episode 2 where their stomachs were cut out. So it was a painless, quick death, I think. Shannon was working with Eva and Hideyoshi, as well as Genji and Nanjo. I think that later Shannon kills Cannon in the guest house as well. And Genji joins Shannon in covering up everything. So all the accomplices drag the bodies to the garden shed. Everyone drags the bodies to the garden shed. Then the faces are destroyed with the tools there. And partially destroyed I think to evade anyone noticing the difference between Shannon and Cannon. I think Shannon dressed Cannon's body to resemble Shannon, and later used the same body she had dressed in the boiler room later on to fake Cannon's death, to make so that Cannon died in the boiler room. So basically, Shannon killed Cannon, and then pretended to be him for the rest of the game, and then used Cannon's body again in the boiler room. So who drew the magic circles? It was Shannon. The same in Maria's diary, to send a message to Maria. So then Maria is an accomplice for the rest of the game after that. And she delivers the letters Shannon gave her in the subsequent incidents. Maria and Shannon's knowledge about the occult, I think it's because Kinzo already died, so Shannon steals the books from Kinzo's library in the study. So I think that's where they get the black magic stuff. Now, let's go to the second Twilight. So there's still the mystery of the receipts that Eva brought up, I think. But since Kinzo's already dead, then Natsuhi knows that Kinzo was already dead, and Krauss knew as well. And I think they try to hide everything from the siblings. I think due to maybe some financial trouble, so they hid it because they didn't want to start the inheritance yet, I think. So there was no Kinzo to be found, so Kinzo didn't leave the room. He never did. He was never there to begin with, I think. And now the second Twilight. I think Shannon grabbed the gun from Kinzo's collection and used it to kill Eva and Hideyoshi. Then later she stabbed the stakes on the forehead, right where the gun hole was. So there was no need to drill the stakes or maybe hammer it in. So how did the murder in the room happen? I think that Shannon was invited to the room to discuss with her conspirators, which was Eva and Hideyoshi, since they were there, since they were supporting her. She killed them. Then the servants lied about the door being closed. And then Cannon, who was now Shannon, Shannon is disguised as Cannon at this point from all the game. She makes a scene about cutting the chain when the door wasn't closed to begin with, I think. So the door was not closed at all, making an illusion that there was a closed room there, but there wasn't. And then they made the magic circle and then made a show of, oh, we just cut the chains so that the family could enter and see Eva and Hideyoshi dead. Fourth Twilight. So there's the Kingzo's body in the boiler room, right? He was not murdered in the family conference at all. He died prior to that. It's already been stated and read this. His body was already, I think his body was already in the furnace before the family had even arrived in Rokkenjima. And I think Shannon or another servant placed the stake on him nearby. Then the fifth Twilight, Cannon. Shannon or one of the servants picked up Cannon's body in the gardening storehouse and in the shed. Then the stake was placed on Cannon's body. And I think that there was no wound on Cannon's face because that was a lie, because Nanjo and Hideyoshi were accomplices to Shannon. And I think that they lied about Shannon's body as well as her wounds. Shannon was very far away and only the two of them have analyzed the bodies. I think that George came close to analyzing Shannon's body, but he wasn't able to because of his father. So there's that. Then the 6th to 8th Twilights. I think that Shannon killed these three as well. I think that maybe she met with her accomplices, which were Genji and Nanjo, and she offered them tea or something. I think that the tea was drugged and Kumasao drank as well. And after they fell or died of poison, they were killed with this. Maybe they died with poison, or maybe Shannon killed them after they were drugged or something. And I think that Maria closed the door afterwards. I think Shannon ordered Maria to close the door, and I think creating an illusion of a closed room afterwards. Then the 9th Twilights. Since Kinzo had a gun collection, Shannon had a gun, and Natsuhi also had a same gun of the same model, I think. I think Shannon dressed as Beatrice from this point on, from the portrait. Came to Natsuhi and then killed her with her own. Then Shannon killed Natsuhi. With a second gun. Then she replaced Natsuhi's gun with her own gun. which was already smoking, so gave the illusion that Natsuhi had shot the gun and was instead hit by the bullet, but it wasn't the case. Then Shannon shows herself to George, Jessica, Maria, and Butler. She was garbed as Beatrice at that point. And then the disaster strikes, killing all of them. The disaster being the landslide that that destroys the mansion and all the surroundings. And I think that is the end of the Ninth Twilight, killing everyone there. So episode 2. I think that this time Rosa is the accomplice, along with the usual servants. Shannon dresses as Beatrice from the very beginning and meets with Maria in the gardens, as well as Rosa. And I think that Cannon is an accomplice as well, maybe. The VIP room that they mention is always empty. And I think that it's a place where Shen can plan the murders for episode 2. And now here comes my twisted logic, because the murders in the chapel are a little bit hard to explain. There are two ideas I found for the murders of the chapel. There's the twisted logic that Shannon and the others got the key from Rosa in the morning. So Rosa went in the cousin's room in the morning of the 5th of October 5th, and she grabbed the letter from Maria's handbag. Butler notices it but goes back to sleep. Rosa goes to the chapel, and they kill and they place the bodies that they have already killed in the chapel right in the morning. So the bodies didn't stay overnight in the chapel. They were killed right in the or they were killed beforehand, and then they moved the bodies inside, or they killed right in the morning. That's the twisted logic. Then there's my cleaner logic, I think. I think that Shannon met with the siblings during the night, and then they were drugged, except Rosa, and they were all killed. And I think that the door to the chapel was never really closed before the relatives arrived, and never closed afterwards. They just made a showing of using the key, but it wasn't closed at all, since all the servants were accomplices. So there was no need to get Maria's key until the time came to open the chapel and discover, in quotation marks, the bodies. So basically that's what happened. Shannon had already discovered the gold, so she placed the 3 bars, the 3 gold bars on the victim's table. And I think that it was used as intimidation and maybe coercion to the remaining accomplices, so they got in line, maybe. Then the second Twilight. I think that Shannon arrived and discussed her plan with Cannon. I think that Shannon killed Jessica with a gun, then drilled the stake in her back. I think that afterwards, Cannon was also killed by Shannon in the room, and Goda carried his body without Cannon's master key, and then his body was never found later on. Then this complicates things because Nanjo and Kumasawa's murders happened before this, but these are considered to be the next Twilights. So this was when they went to Natsuhi's room to get the mirror or something. I think that Shannon kills both Goda and George in the room. Then she closes Natsuhi's room with the key to Natsuhi, the specific key. Then she puts the key in George's pocket. And then she commits suicide because I think that she doesn't think Battler can remember. Because I think that she lost hope in Battler remembering the promise or the sin or whatever that he broke. So I think that she commits suicide after knowing that Battler won't remember things. Then the 7th to 8th Twilights with Nanjo and Kumasawa, they were killed prior to they were killed prior to the other Twilights that I mentioned before. So Shannon killed Nanjo and Kumasawa, and all the other servants in the room covered it up, saying it was a ghost of Canon going crazy mad. There was never an evil Canon in the first place. It was all a lie. I think they then put the bodies outside as the 7th and 8th Twilights. And then and these two were killed before Shannon and George and Goda died. So it makes a mess of the timeline of events because of this. But I think that's what happened. Yeah. So I don't think I put a 9th Twilight here. So let's review things here. The 9th Twilight. Rosa is the one who places Shannon's letter in the room instead of Battler, and then she chases him away with a gun. Both Maria and Rosa flee and try to find where the gold is on the chapel. Meanwhile, Battler remains drunk and is led to the study by Genji, who also survived. And then the disaster strikes, killing them all. The landslide that I talked about. So episode 3. Episode 3 is a complete doozy, man. It's complicated. I think this time Shannon is not only the killer, but there's also Ava. The first closed room was completely completely insane, man. I honestly have a little clue about it, but I'll give my best to try and explain. There are two things that weirded me out. There's the chapel and the parlor, where both Canon and Shannon were dead. My theory is that the chapel was open. It wasn't a closed room. So let's go with that. Canon was the corpse they found in the parlor. So the corpse that Rudolph had tried to wake up. So it was a dead corpse by then. And it was Canon dressed as Shannon in the parlor. And then after the adults left and went to investigate all other crime scenes, because there's like they go all over the place. Shannon dragged Cannon's body to the chapel then dressed him as Canon, took off the disguise on his body, then went to the parlor. So she left Canon. So it basically was an exchange of bodies, a happy exchange. Shannon placed Canon's corpse on the parlor, and then the siblings broke into the parlor, saw Shannon in quotation marks, and then left. Shannon, who was still alive, dragged Canon's body to the chapel and left him there. And then she went back to the parlor and disguised herself as a dead body, completing the closed room and the 6 bodies. Oh man, so she was still alive and faking her death, and used Canon's body to make up for her body. And then she herself pretended to be dead afterwards. Then the second twilight happens and things go insane. I think that Ava and Rosa get into a confrontation about the gold. I think Ava was paranoid that Rosa was going to steal or maybe tell the other siblings about it. And I think that Hideyoshi knew that Ava was going to confront. And I think that the fever or whatever was a lie that both Hideyoshi and Ava perpetuated. So I think that both Ava and Rosa get into a very bad scuffle, like they fight each other. And I think that Ava accidentally pushes Rosa into the fence, skewering Rosa's neck with the pointy fence. So I think that Rosa's death was accidental, I think. And then I think that Maria tries to run away, but I think that Ava strangles Maria so that the little girl can't place Ava as the culprit. Since the stakes of purgatory were not involved, I think that it's safe to say that there's 2 culprits in episode 3. That's Ava and Shannon. Then there's a third. Then I think there's a third killer that briefly appears. I think that Kiri was suspicious. Third and fourth killer, I guess. Things get very messy in episode 3. I think that Kiri was suspicious of Ava and Hideyoshi. And I think that she lured Hideyoshi to the mansion. And Hideyoshi noticed that they were about to kill him. And I think that Hideyoshi killed Rudolph in the kitchen. I think and that made Kiri very mad, and she tried to kill Hideyoshi. So basically Hideyoshi killed Rudolph, Kiri killed Hideyoshi in turn. I think that Kiri tried to go back to the guest house, but I think that she was killed by Shannon instead. And Shannon dragged their corpses to the entrance and decorated them with the stakes this time. So Shannon was the one responsible for the site in the mansion afterwards. So the one responsible for the 4th to 6th twilights was Shannon, and the second twilight was Ava. Now the 7 to 8 twilights. I think that Ava thought that Krauss and Natsuhi were involved in Hideyoshi's murder. I think that she thought that. I think that she drugs them both with her coffee. She makes coffee for them. And I think that she kills them in the guest house. I think that she drags both of them outside to the arbor in the flower in the rose garden. And then later Shannon comes by to the arbor and stakes both their bodies after she killed George. So Krauss and Natsuhi are killed by Ava, and George is killed by Shannon. Oh, and now the ninth twilight. I think that George opened the window and escaped to the mansion while Ava was killing Krauss and Natsuhi downstairs. And I think that Nanjo later closed the window because he was an accomplice to Shannon, not Ava. I think Shannon then met with George in the parlor, a lover's reunion, before killing him. She later placed the stakes on Krauss and Natsuhi, and then she dragged Cannon's body from the chapel and put him with George's body in the parlor again, dressed as Shannon. It's quite complicated, I know. So Ava thought both Battler and Jessica were the culprits to George's death. And following along, she tried to kill Jessica and making it so it seemed like an accident, a misfire, but it didn't work. And Battler went after Ava, only to get killed by Ava. Then Shannon approached Nanjo and killed him, then acted as Cannon to a blind Jessica, and then lured her away to kill her afterwards. Then Shannon confronted Ava later about Ava having killed Battler and about solving the epitaph. And I think that later Shannon committed suicide next to Battler's corpse. So then Ava was the only one left. She escaped to Quadorian through the secret through the secret passage and was the sole survivor. And then episode 4, I have no clue. I can say with certainty that I am very close or hit on the mark with the previous theories I made. But episode 4 is just so insane. I have no clue at all in most cases that happen. Still, I think the main culprits are Kyrie and Shannon. However, Kyrie is somewhat an odd choice because her husband dies on the first twilight. I think I need more clues about Kyrie because I have no idea what her motives were. I think that the first twilight was insane. I think that doesn't happen until much later. I think that the family is drugged on the family conference, and then Krauss is intimidated by the servants to comply with their tests. Later, Shannon kills the drugged siblings after locking up Krauss. Locking up in quotation marks, because I don't think that they were locked up in Quadorian, they were still in the mansion, but someplace else. Maybe, I don't know. I think that Kyrie was... It's a stretch, I know, but let's go with it. Kyrie is tasked with testing the children. So this is the stretch part. I think that Kyrie is tasked with testing the children and then freeing Golda and the others as some sort of intimidation by Shannon, but I don't think it works. I think that Kyrie doesn't like what Shannon has done to her husband and then starts killing instead, killing everyone. I think that George is killed by Kyrie since he's Shannon's lover. After, I think that she goes to the shed and kills Goda and Kumasawa through the small window with a gun. But I cannot, for the life of me, I can't explain the ropes. I have no idea. I'm sorry. I have no idea what happened. And I think that Kyrie goes to Jessica's room So Kirie goes to Jessica's room, then intimidates Jessica in telling a bunch of lies through the phone to confuse Battler, I think. Maybe it's because she wants to get some revenge on Battler or something. Because he was Asumu's son, in quotation marks, because he's not. He's not Asumu's son. I don't know. I'm really confused by episode 4. I'm pretty airtight on the 3 previous episodes, but episode 4 is just really messing with my head. I think that Krauss hears about Jessica's death, and I think she tries to escape through the back door. I think that he tries. So Krauss hears about Jessica dying, so he flees through the back door. However, Shannon hunts him down, so they're in the mansion, not in Ecuadorian. Shannon hunts him down and kills him. And I think that Kirie wants revenge for her husband. I'm still confused about that. And I think that she hunts down the rest of the servants and is searching to kill Shannon. I think that she wants to kill all the accomplices and then kill the main culprit, which is Shannon. And maybe but then it confuses me again because there's the call of Battler, and before Kirie finishes the call, she's shot and killed by Shannon, which doesn't make any sense. So my theory is already rejected at that point of episode 4, at least. And then I think that Shannon later, after killing Kirie, places the stakes on everybody, and then calls the guest house, then calls Maria to the chapel and Battler to the mansion, right? She closes the mansion, and there are sweets in the chapel that Maria eats, and then she dies of poison there. Then Shannon tests Battler, but Battler does not remember the promise nor the sin that he committed, or whatever, the broken promise. And I think that Shannon is disappointed at that point. And then Kennan's body was placed next to Nanjo, dressed as Shannon. Shannon retrieves Maria's corpse and leaves Maria's corpse next to her mother in the dining table. And then she goes to the room of gold, the passageway, and commits suicide there in the chapel, beneath the chapel, I think. And I think that Battler is left alone the whole next day. So basically, it all ends on October 4th. And October 5th, Battler is left all alone in the island with no one there. Everyone dead already. And I think that he dies from the disaster, the landslide I talked about. And I think that is my whole theory, I guess. Before I go so further into episode 5. And yeah, I think this is it. Thanks for watching.